Si je sais, j'habite au Canada. Hai, Tosh, 어르신 보여서 요셉 원래는 servo. Assim, si je sais, j'habite au Canada.
Right. So, um, I hardly talk about this, but I feel it's been coming up again and again, every once in a while. Um, I don't want to be too over passionate about this, but for me, I've always felt like this pull towards the natural. So when it comes to, say, languages, because I'm a language teacher and all those wonderful earthly things, and I think it's time to go back to exactly what children do. You know, the way we do things, the way we do things as children, the way we acquired our language. It's called acquisition, but the point is you pick it up, it's natural, and it's languages are languages. But I feel like part of it is that we take it for granted, as if it's just a language, it's just words and all that stuff. No, I don't think so. I personally feel from my experience that it's important to, well, I wouldn't say important, but I mean, it really helps to connect with others. Um, and I think it starts from it's good when we do it naturally from the very get-go. And, but also the point is that it's not really about language, it's about um, finding another tool, or what do you call this, like a medium, so to speak, of how to connect with people. So I've always learned that when it comes to languages, it's more than language, it's more than words, it's more than even communication. I went deeper into this, and I noticed that it was like, oh, what is communication? Isn't that just like talking? It's like, no, actually it's not. It's intention. And but behind intention is a what is culture. There's culture, but there's what I call like an individual culture and collective culture. Both influence how we communicate. So, for example, I was raised bilingual. So when I talk to my parents, I speak to them in English. Well, that's more, what do you call this? It's stronger. I don't speak to them in Filipino or Tagalog because I don't know. I think I was raised here for a long time, which actually comes to think of. I was thinking about it, and I was just like wondering, is the first language the only thing? I don't know. Like being raised bilingual, I have fluency in listening, and that's one of the most important things. It's funny. It's like, well, isn't fluency with only with speaking? It's like, no, actually, it's not, because fluency. What else is fluency? It's a flow, right? So if we think about it as flow, it's actually, you can feel it. If we go back into the body, if we go back to things that are natural, if we go back to, just being natural. I don't know how else to put it. Just be natural and stop doing, because we've been so used for such a long time to just do. We look at the outcome, and we look for the outcome. We're always like goal oriented, and it's like there's nothing wrong with goals. It's not about goals. It's about being in the present moment. I posted videos on this before, stating that, you know this is why the only teachers I have in my life really are children, because they teach me to be, even animals, right? Plants, especially, even plants, right? They teach you how to be in the moment. So just as I'm talking right now, I can sense when there's a certain excitement. I can sense, right? It's really not about is something that you can't explain. But I think within the language community, linguistics, whatever it is, all of it, there's this thing that's been going on for such a long time that we're so used to it and we think it's right, which is you go to class, you take a class. What do you do first? You learn the writing system of that language. First of all, this whole thing that it's like it's a language class, period. The fact that it's like you have to go to a language class. It's like getting to know someone. Every language has its own personality. It's an energy. People don't realize that it's like it's an energy, but it is an energy. So, like for example, when I just been working where I'm working, just having to work where I'm working, the students that I talk to, the program is all traditional stuff, right? It's all, and there's nothing wrong with traditional, but we have to kind of wonder, is it actually effective? And the answer is, in my experience, no, it's not effective. So, by the way, this is the international airport where I live. So, anyways, I think when we do things out of the ego and when it's outcome oriented and it's all just rush, 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 doing, results. What happens is that you see that energy, if you feel it, it feels rushed. This is why I encounter this all the time. I do it. I encountered it for myself. I realized I was like, I don't feel good about speaking a language. People think I'm not fluent in a language. I'm not there yet. Right? The idea that we have to be there. There. It's like we're not present. It's like I have to speak the language right away. Well, how do you express something without having to go inside? How do you pour a glass of water from a bottle if there's nothing in it? You can't really see the bottle. Sorry. Right here. How do you pour water out of a bottle or out of a pitcher without source, without it has to be filled in first. Doesn't work that way. That's a simple analogy. But when it comes to all this stuff, is not content that's important. It is context. What I mean by that is not just like stories. It's about, do we understand how something is? So, for example, if I were to speak in French right now, for example, I'm Canadian, I would have to think about it because what I'm doing is I'm thinking about it. I know that I'm visualizing the words. I know I've looked at the spelling. I know I was like, then I translate all of it. Is that really communication, or is this just blurting out words? Right. This is the deeper meaning of communication. Communication is not just blah 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 blah. It's like talking to a robot. If you're talking about robots, but I mean, all that in itself is energy. Um, so tying this to this whole thing that I'm talking about, it's all connected. And I know what I always kind of get a lot of like, you're so gay, but I'm just like, okay, thank you. Yes, I'm conservative when it comes to this way, but so is the system that's been conservative for such a long time, hundreds of years, if not thousands, of saying it has to be this way, 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 it has to be this way. There is no one way. The one thing I do know is being natural is something that we, do. Like, for example, like for me, what doesn't work is translation. The reason it doesn't work is because translation just gives you this to this, and then that's it. But what we don't realize is that when we translate something into our own language, when we're trying to learn something, what happens is the perception of that energy, the perception of what that word is, that concept, that energy itself. Every word has energy. We perceive it through our own lens, through our own acquired language. our mother tongue, so to speak, or a language that we're used to. But I don't know, like for me as a being raised bilingual, I do understand like Filipino culture, like I understand it, but I don't understand some of it because I've been away for such a long time. My sister is kind of like more 50-50. She still gets it. But what happens is that she's actually transferred some of the behavior from the culture into how she speaks. It just comes off. That's why it comes off like what, right? Because I mean, if you think about how language forms, it attaches itself to culture. A culture is a substance. Culture is a form. It's something that's already formed. It has its own personality. I've learned as I was doing some. I wouldn't say research, but I saw some things online. I saw that it's like the there's this thing where it's like people think it's perceived or based on the research that culture comes from language. How does culture come from language? I mean, if you think about language, it's a mode of communication, right? It's communication. But what is communication? There's this perceived idea when it's communication. It's like you're going from this to this, transmitting, but behind all of that stuff. So I would say that yes, they're right, but there's underneath that, there's the individual behavior, there's the personality. When I say personality, I mean the person who has that sort of like, I think this is what this body likes. I think this body is going to express itself this way and that way, this way, and likes, dislikes, not yes, no. All these things that are in favor of the entire being, the personality and the body, so to express something. Just because a child, for example, doesn't know how to express itself doesn't mean that they don't know what they want. They're just not able to express it through language, meaning through sounds that are, because language is just words, right? It is words, but it is, what do you call this? Language is words, but when we don't know the words to express them, we do it in other ways, right? There's a reason why it's saying, at least based on research, the majority, it doesn't matter what the number is, to me, it doesn't matter. 70 to 80% of communication is body language. So why do we spend 70 to 80%, if not 90% or not 100%, learning language as in like studying it, regurgitating, memorizing, flashcards, translation, corrections, give me corrections or I correct you. It's a very, actually correction is another thing. It's actually very damaging because we don't realize how it's the same thing as saying, no, that's wrong. Why subconsciously, because of all of us growing up, we have this trauma. We all have trauma. No is subconsciously means like something wrong with you. What you're expressing is going to be invalidated, and what I'm going to say is what's going to be validated, not yours. So it comes down back to this whole thing. I think that not only will the education have to change, but the way we perceive it. And I get a lot of what is the word guff? I get a lot of like stuff from this from people that I know. Um, I think it's more like how I said it or how I have said it in the past, and it's always kind of like misconstrued. Like when I say something, and this is the thing, right? When I express something, sometimes that also gets misconstrued. So people might be thinking, some of you might be thinking, or I've even thought about this, and I said, well, if you're going to be misconstrued anyways, what's the point of acquiring it? Well, there is a general feel of the personality of the language, and then there's the individualized understanding of that. So an example would be like your English would be different from your mother's English, specifically, not because of there's no cultural differences. You were raised in the same culture, if not maybe close to that. but the way you express it is going to be different from your mother's because of your personality. So that's the whole thing, right? So there's the general accepted understanding of, let's say, like idioms, for example. But we like to box things in as if they're just only that. It's okay to have these categories, as Eckhart puts it. Eckhart Tolle, for those who don't know, he said that words are just stepping stones. Right? Now, and I'm kind of going to add on to I'm going to just add a little tidbit here. Sometimes he translates on his, in his, I don't know what it is, his conferences, whatever, right? For those reasons, when you translate and it's for the specific audience, it's for that specific audience. It has nothing to do with trying to get into the other language. It's not trying to learn it or acquire it at all. But the moment we want to connect, there's this understanding that the reason why there are some people who love languages not for the sake of just like learning itself. They want to connect. For me, that's what it is. I want to connect with people. But why do we want to connect with people? It's a natural thing. But sometimes when because of the cultures that have developed in this planet over time, in the linear time, its culture is a part of that. The moment we resist that, the moment there's a resistance towards like, well, I'm just going to speak English to them, or I'm going to try to speak their language, but not really understand where they're coming from. But it doesn't help when we're trying to do language learning, as in not the concept of language learning itself, but like breaking it, going from the broken down parts and then straight into then later trying to understand it. That doesn't make sense. Even though we get to know a person by their name, that's just their name. If we were trying to do the same thing to a person, if we were trying to get to know someone, or if you're just trying to get to, just like know someone, if we kept breaking it down to the little parts and saying, for example, it's almost like doing research on a person. So this is your behavior. This is what you like. Okay. And why is that? Okay. So, and then later it goes into something more personal. It's like, "Well, why did this happen?" It's very, yes, kind of objective, but it's very also cold. It's not working with the emotions. It's opposite of indulging in emotions and completely like disregarding and invalidating emotions, experience, personal growth, and all those things. That is very more personal, right? 3D with the 5D, 3D or vertical with horizontal, whatever it is, right? And we can't deny everything. At the moment we resist something, like for me, like when it comes to resisting something, sometimes there's a part of me that does resist translation. That's because when it's translation, like there's a part of me that's, what do you call that? There's a part of me that relates that to there's a part of me that relates that to cheating. Like when we translate, we just get the answer, right? Like I know there's a lot of stuff, a lot of people where I work, there's a lot of students that just go straight into like they go into class and what happens? They go into a translator, they type in the words in Korean, the Koreans, and then they say it in English, and then I correct them. And then it repeats again and again and again and again and again and again every time. That's the funny thing about this whole thing. Um Truthfully, I don't want to keep working in like in a kind of that kind of system. However, there's a greater it to me this job is, to be honest, like kind of like almost like a means to an end, but I use it as a way to just connect with people and I connect with them. That's the thing that's very beautiful about the job that I do. So it's not really about the teaching. I don't see it as like, oh, this is what I'm doing, it's my teaching. And it's like, no, because I don't do it that way. So it's balancing things between what resonates with me, what is more of a priority. Going, my priority is to work on my work on my business, work on my the things that I want to do, the things that inspire me, that lift me up, versus and also versus as well, and also using the things that can be used. Like, for example, this is a job is a job. It's not a career. But because it's not toxic, but because it's not like this sort of like horrible sort of like, job that it's like, I take from it what I can get, and it's wonderful because like, and the managers that I talk to, the people in there, they're great. So it's nothing horrible. I'm very grateful for this job, actually. Grateful for the income that I get. So there's a greater thing. So anyways, I just wanted to share that when it comes to languages, it's tied to a lot to, this rush that when it comes to like, I still see it. And you still see people posting on here on YouTube going, learn the phrases, da da da, and do this subconsciously overnight. Sleep on it, and it's all translated, right? And these are the phrases, and these are the grammar. And then they use concept like comprehensible input, and they put it as if it's comprehensible input. They're stuck on the actual the itself. It's like saying play. To play is just to play. To play means to go into this sport. That is what playing is. We box it in, and we're kind of limiting ourselves. It's very disempowering because it's like, is it like, is playing just playing like toys, sports, being a child? Is that what play is? Because we're stuck on the idea that's play, even though we're like stuck on the play. So when I see natural, I literally meant like everything. Everything can be play. Everything can be communication. Everything is energy. Everything can be fun. Everything can be also serious. Everything can be everything. So that's one of the things I'm still learning myself. So there is timing in when I translate. So for example, that's one things I don't do. But when it comes to translation, I don't really like it. There's a resistance towards it. But then I was like, okay, well, there are times when I just need to translate. Like for this job, I translate sometimes because it's translation, and it's this is the system. This is what they do. Whether I agree with it or not, the one that takes priority is j- you know having this job, and because it's not so, it's not negative. It's what it is. They don't know what they're doing. They're just that's it. That's fine. But outside of the workplace, I don't do any of that stuff. So translation isn't a bad thing, it's a tool, but how I respond to it is the one thing that I constantly work on. A lot of it is also self course, like self-worth. Right. For myself, it's um, growing up in a family where I don't communication was kind of always like kind of like, what? I don't understand. It's weird. And when it comes to languages, I've always kind of had this negativity around it. I don't how do you call this? I don't like, I feel like there's times where I don't feel like I speak English. Or I don't speak this language or something like that. It comes down to all that stuff, childhood stuff, where it's just like being misunderstood. It really actually, there you go. That's the thing, being misunderstood. Um, so it's there's a subconscious link to communication itself. But become my this has become a gift for me, where it's like, okay, then let me be misunderstood. So the gift behind that is knowing exactly how I want it, and that inspires me. Working with both the ego and the higher self, and saying that, okay, that's fine. People don't have to do what I do. People don't have to follow what I follow. It doesn't have to be like that. You do what works for you. Um, One of the things I just kind of want to pose is the question is, does it feel empowering? I mean, language is one of those things where we kind of just see it as like it's just language, right? But communication is what's beneath that. The beauty of the cultures that have come, the gifts from this form, the civilizations that arose, right? The beauty of creation, the beauty of like everything that was created. Even if a language was just created, right? There's still going to be energy behind it. There's still going to be the culture. Then there's still going to be, underneath all that, there's that intention, individual intention, behavior as well. Forgot to mention that, right? And then there's a collective intention in behavior. But again, we get stuck on these terminologies. We get stuck on techniques and methods and all these things. So the question that I'm posing again is it empowering? Is it inspired? Do you feel connected? Because I know when I go through, like, for example, there's one YouTuber who's posted stories in Slovak. She's so funny and she really connects with you. There's like one time where she did have to translate, but the rest of it was just completely like, wow, it's all in Slovak. And I literally picked things up like right away. Not to say that it's expressed, like means spoken, like I'm not speaking it yet, but I understand it. There's so right away, it clicked, something clicked, and I was just like, wow, okay, right, right. So, and yes, languages do take time, um, but it's going to take a lot longer if it's not inspired, if it's not connected, if it's not natural, right? So, I don't know. I think you just got to test it out. Works what works for you, but what also works. It's kind of like saying like we have free will, but we also have fate. There's neither are separate. They're not separate from each other, right? So um, that's how I see it. Anyways, thank you for watching. I hope this provides something for you guys. Leave a comments below. Even if it's negative, go ahead and be negative. I'm not going to watch it. I'm not going to read it. It's not good energy. But I'll take from it what I can. If it's true, it makes me, okay, cool. There's a difference between being negative and just like outright, "Bleh." And then there's a between that and completely like owning what it is you're feeling. But again, right? That's we're connected. We're all connected. We're all one, but also unique at the same time. So all of it is all of it is all of it is all of it. Thanks.